Hello and welcome back to the You Love to See YouTube channel. My name is Jake and we are here. This is the first episode of this weekly show that I've been wanting to put out for a little while now, and it's been in the works here. It's called Raise The Trident, as you can see up above. Awesome graphics made by my boy Robbie. Go give him a follow on Twitter. His information is going to be in the description. But really, I just want to finally have kind of like my own like podcast type thing again. You'll see kind of towards the end of the episode, it's not all going to be just podcast, stream of consciousness talking from what's going on in the Mariners. I have a few fun segments that I'm going to be putting at the end of the shows. Those are just little bits of creativity, going to be with other members in the creator community as well. So you'll see some familiar faces and just some things to kind of just be fun and enjoyable towards the end, even if the Mariners aren't playing exactly how we would like them to be. But yeah, we're going to get right into it. We are finally a week down in the Seattle Mariners 2024 season. We've had our first two series of the year, both at home. Didn't go exactly how we would have liked. So we're going to do a quick rundown of how all of them went. Give me quick summaries. And then at that point afterwards, we will go into more topic discussion at that point. So first, got to go through the series with the Red Sox. It started with a 4-game series against them. First opening day, the excitement was in the air, but it got stifled pretty quickly. La Piedra, Luis Castillo had a pretty rough outing. It was fine for the first 4 innings, but then in the 5th inning, he gave up 4 earned runs. Our defense was not up to par either, a trend that would continue further into the week. We'll get into that. But in the 4th, a contact play saw Tyler O'Neill try to score from home to a ground ball from Josh Rojas, who was at third. Well, Josh Rojas's throw ended up plunking off of his helmet and going wild. So that scores a run right there and moved up some runners. And then we had later in that game a slowly played ground ball by Dominic Canzone in the left field corner. He thought it was going to be an easy double. He was kind of taking his time with it. Didn't really expect Cedane Rafaela to be trying to leg out a triple. Well, that's what he did because of how slow he played it, and Rafaela got there. Not great. Rafaela did end up scoring too, so it mattered. So not very nice. And then we would get some offense that game in opening day, namely Mitch Haniger. Welcome back to Seattle, baby. A jack on his first game back. That rhymed. I am a poet. Didn't even know it. And then later on, Dylan Moore came in, had a pinch hit bomb as well. That was awesome. However, still dropped the first game 6-4. Opening day did not get the W like we would have liked. Let's go into game 2 now. The opening day L would be shadowed by 2 bounce back W's. Pretty nice. First one being at the hands of George Kirby, who I know a lot of people coming into the season was kind of hoping may take that Cy Young approach and may kind of cement himself as the true ace of this rotation. It went pretty good. Final line, 6.2 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 runs, 2 walks, and 8 Ks. He was getting a lot of whiffs, a lot more than normal. Got 17 whiffs, 5 on the fastball, 5 on the knuckle curve. Thankfully, that performance was enough to edge out the win, as our offense had a really tough time against Red Sox starter Nick Pivetta. But the only run came off of J.P. Crawford, hit a 381-foot tank into the right field seats. So we were able to edge that out 1-0. Going into game 3 of the Red Sox series, the pitching performance didn't take a break. Logan Gilbert had a phenomenal game, had a final line of 7 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, and 8 Ks. Amazing. Our offense continued to struggle, which we'll get into, was a big theme for this first week. But it went into tied 1 run apiece in the 10th inning. The Red Sox would score 2 runs in their top of the 10th, so it was kind of feeling pretty dire. Wasn't really feeling good, especially with Ty France being the Manfred man at second. Not a whole lot of speed, as we know. But Josh Rojas, or actually really started with Luke Raley, broken bat blooper that scored Ty France, because Ty did a really good job of gauging that ball and the fact it was going to land in between the third baseman and the left fielder. Ended up scoring on that. And then Josh Rojas would follow it with a 1-out single, which got bobbled in the outfield, causing Luke Raley to get to third, Josh Rojas to second. Pretty good scenario here, since we're down one at this point. JP Crawford would do a really soft ground ball to second base. Luke Rayleigh, surprising speed, beat the tag at home. So he would end up tying the game there. And then you have Josh Rojas at third with Julio coming up with only one out. Can Julio finally get his walk-off hit? He did. It was awesome and nice. He sent a cutter right to the right center grass, scoring Rojas. Amazing time. Julio Rodriguez finally got his walk-off hit. I know we were all really pumped for that. After this, it didn't get as good for the next game. Unfortunately, game 4, we had Bryce Miller on the bump. The main thing coming into 2024 was, is he going to finally have some of those good off-speed or breaking pitches to help play off of his fastball and get some whiffs, get some Ks that way? And the first inning, it really looked like he did. He got 2 Ks on the splitter and 1 K on the slider. So really good outlook on that. However, the Red Sox were able to ambush him. Tyler O'Neill did with a jack. It was like a first pitch, top of the zone fastball, just hit it into the left field bleachers. And then, unfortunately, Emmanuel Valdez, who you wouldn't expect to probably hit a dinger at that point, in the 4th, got really lucky with a no swing call, ends up making us pay for it by putting the ball in the right field seats. Quick 4-0 deficit, and our bats were still virtually non-existent, and we only managed up getting 1 run. So we would split the 4-game series with the Boston Red Sox. So we go into our next series against the Cleveland Guardians. We're 2-2. I, going into this series, figured we could probably get a series win, and the pitching was kind of on our side. The real big issue was going to be in game 2 against Shane Bieber. But let's go over those games. So Emerson Hancock got the ball for game 1. He was taking over for Brian Wu, who is on the IL right now. This was kind of the game I was expecting us to most likely lose and be fine with it. We didn't lose, which is cool. We actually did really good about Guardians pitcher Tristan McKenzie. We chased him out pretty quickly. I think it was only within like 4 innings or so. And yeah, it ended up being really good. Emerson Hancock had a decent game, pretty much did what you needed him to do in 5.1 innings, gave up 3 runs on 4 hits. So we will take that. And thankfully, we were able to score enough early to seal the game, because in the second inning, we got 4 runs. 3 of those came to the hands of Dominic Canzone, getting a hold of one and putting it in the pen area, not the bullpen, like those seats that are just to the right of the bullpen, whatever you want to call this, standing room. We'll go with that. So we're just able to eke out the first game 5-4. Going into the second, Luis Castillo versus Shane Bieber. I know we were all looking forward to this. 2 Cy Young candidates. Shane Bieber's 1-1, and we were hoping that this would be a really good pitching matchup that we could hopefully edge out. Unfortunately, that did not happen on either side of the ball, really. Castillo had another really mediocre start. Didn't do any better than opening day. It was kind of similar than opening day in the sense that the first 3 to 4 innings, he was cruising. And then like the 5th inning, the wheels came off entirely. His command just went away. I think a lot of it has to do with him going in the stretch. Now, I don't have numbers to back that up. However, that's what it seems to me to be the issue. So if you know where I can find numbers for like stretch versus windup for pitchers and their stats, let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate that. But yeah, he gave up, I think it was, let's see, gave up a lot of runs. I think he gave up like 4 or 5, unfortunately. And with Shane Bieber, we can't afford that at all. I think he actually only gave up 3. But at that point, that's pretty insurmountable going against Shane Bieber. And we only end up scoring 2 runs in the game. So we would end up losing game 2. So it goes to game 3, which occurred today. And we're talking this coming out tomorrow. So this is as of yesterday. Rubber match. George Kirby's on the bump. As I stated earlier, his first game in 2024 against the Red Sox went amazing. So we were hoping he could replicate that. The Guardians are a pretty contact heavy, aggressive lineup. that is kind of George's kryptonite, and it showed pretty bad. Basically, his worst start of his career happened yesterday. He had to give up 8 runs and 3.2 innings pitched. I mean, at that point, like, what can you even say, especially on the offensive side? I mean, they'd have to go absolutely nuts to bring the game back. But the defense didn't really help, unfortunately. Kirby got really unlucky on that. There was so many balls that were hit off of our gloves, whether it was us jumping to catch them and missing, or ground balls that were just out of reach. It was pretty rough. There was a really scary scenario that occurred in the fourth inning that saw a ground ball go to Jorge Polanco. However, JP Crawford was moving over to second base already due to a base runner trying to steal second. He decides he's also going to go after that ground ball too. Don't know why. But they collide, and pretty scary. I think we all were holding our breath because we cannot afford another injury. We can't afford any injuries, really. I mean, so especially to come from a JP Crawford to be injured because he was down for a little bit. It looks like Jorge Polanco's foot on the way down hit him in the back of the head. However, he stayed in the game. They both stayed in the game. So we can breathe a nice sigh of relief that didn't end up worse. But still, the game result was not how we wanted it. Ended up losing 8-0. The bullpen did pretty fine after Kirby went in. I know Austin Voth, Trent Thornton did good. Josh Rojas pitched the top of the ninth, and he has a 0 ERA. We'll put it that way. He walked Jose Ramirez and then got one pop up and then uh, a double play. So pretty cool. We'll take those. However, that does mean that we lost the series against the Guardians. So we're going into this next road trip at a record of 3-4, losing homestand. Not what I think any of us thought would happen or wanted to happen. For this first week of the season. I know, especially coming out of spring training, I think we all felt really good about what our options were and what our how our guys were doing. They were crushing it in Peoria. Unfortunately, did not do that in Seattle. Pretty rough. I know a lot of the narratives tend to go around that in April, May, it's a lot colder than it will be in the summer. So sometimes that's one of the main reasons why we may get off to these very slow starts, and that may be true. However, uh, this was pretty exceptionally slow. So we'll get into kind of the topic discussion for now and kind of everything that came up through this first week of the season. We'll start with the offense. Let's just get this over with. We need to talk about it. First, strikeouts are the main concern right now. Through 7 games, we've struck out 74 times, which ties us for second in the league. We are tied with St. Louis, and we're just under the Dodgers, who have played one extra game than us. As of now, 2 extra games from when I did the research. So still, that's not good. And with our offensive game plan in winter was to cut down on the strikeouts. That's why we sent Eugenio Suarez away. That's why part of the reason why we sent away Jared Kelenic. And the first week was not a very good omen for that mission that we have from the front office of cutting down the Ks. I do think a lot of it has to come into that you're probably going to strike out more in that first week of the season. You're getting used to pitchers still, even from spring training. It's a different environment. The new players who are new to Seattle, Mitch Garver, Jorge Polanco. I mean, they're getting used to what our stadium looks like on a regular basis. So there's a lot of things that can go into it. However, I'm not necessarily worried that strikeouts are going to be like our big issue for this whole season because the guys we acquired aren't huge strikeout guys, pretty much other than Luke Raley. So Jorge Polanco struck out a bunch. Mitch Garver really didn't. He was getting a lot of soft contact, but even then, I'm not like worried yet. And the key word is yet because it's early. And I know people hate when I say that. And I want to touch on this it's early stuff first. Um, When I say it's early, it is too early to assume how players are going to play for the whole season. It's too early to say someone's a bust. It's too early to say a specific player is not going to be able to do it in Seattle. That is those are things where it is truly too early to say that. What isn't too early is to talk about the results that we're getting on the field in the sense of our record, right? Because last year we lost the division and lost our playoff chances by literally one game. So when it comes to splitting the series against the Red Sox, I can accept that. The Red Sox, I think, a lot of people say, oh, they're a fifth place team. There's a difference between a fifth place team like the Oakland Athletics than a fifth place team in the AL East. Okay. The Red Sox are more likely than not still going to be somewhat close-ish to 500. So it's not really the same. I'm okay with splitting the series with them. However, I'm not okay with losing the series to the Guardians because I truly feel like we are a much better ball club than them. I think that we should have won that series plain and simple. And so that's going to be a series that come in September. If it's things are really close, I am going to be looking back on being like, if we could have only won that series instead of lost it, got that one extra game, that Kirby could have been better that one time, or Castillo could have been better that one time, or our offense could have picked it up for one of those games, then that is when I'm going to start, holding on to those things. So we'll get into that. Now, back into the offense. To really put into perspective how bad it was, we are seventh worst in WRC plus. I don't know the math on that, so I guess that's what, like 23rd in WRC plus at 71. We're third in the league in worst batting average, third in worst on base percentage, second in worst slugging percentage, and we are dead last in OPS as of today. So the third. So not good. We can't really be too happy with that. Now, I will say that having that be our stat line and us still taking 3 games out of those 2 series is kind of a testament, one, to our pitching staff, really, but also, I don't think they're obviously not going to be this bad for the rest of the season. So kind of it is what it is at this point. It wasn't fun to watch, and I get that. But um, the second thing I wanted to get into the offensive thing is I was getting really frustrated with like some of these obvious strike threes we were taking. We got to clean that up a bit. Seeing a lot of like curveballs that were going right down the middle that we were taking for strike three. I saw it from JP Crawford. I saw it from Julio Rodriguez. Pretty sure I saw it from Mitch Garver. And it's just like, what are we doing, guys? Like a 2 strike count, right? Like you were taught from literal elementary school and T-ball, like a 2 strike count, you open up your zone a little bit, and anything close you go for. So there's like a little bit of, I guess, trigger shyness is the best way for me to put it. That I think is really interesting. Um, and that kind of leads into my third big negative outlook on offense in this first week is, and Ben Ranieri said this on the Locked On Mariners podcast, and I totally agree. They looked like they were pressing. I saw a lot of swings, especially from like a Jorge Polanco, this last 2 series, looking like you were trying to go 450, right? And the times when we were scoring a lot of the runs was the times when we were just trying to put the ball in play. And when we did that, we were seeing good results. We don't need to hit these home runs all the time. But a lot of the swings are indicative of us trying to do that. And when you overswing, you are going to whiff more. And when you whiff more, you're not going to put the ball in play if you whiff. So I think our hitting department has their work cut out for them. I still think there's a lot of offensive talent on this team. A couple positive things I want to inject here because at the end of the day, I'm a pretty optimistic person. Ty France is hitting the ball really well. His current slash line is 320, 370, 730. So cannot be upset at that at all. Same with Josh Rojas, 12 at bats, has a slash line of 417, 417, 917. So, like, awesome. I think he needs to play more than Urias at this point. He's the hot bat. Keep him in the lineup. And then Mitch Haniger's been pretty solid. He had the opening day dinger, and his slash line right now is 261, 346, 824. So we do have some guys that are playing really well. And I am really excited the fact that Ty France is playing well because that is pretty big for us. The bounce back drive line season is real. But yeah, that's pretty much what I want to touch on the offense. I think it is perfectly fine for us to be very, worried about certain aspects of our offense, especially like the strikeouts and all that. However, I do think, once again, touching on the it's early topic as I did earlier, it's not okay to say that like Dominic Canzone's going to suck this year or Luis Urias is going to suck this year. Like, we need to give these guys at least through like April before we start having conversations like that where people maybe need to get sent down or up or whatever you want to call it. But we're going to move on from the offense and we're going to talk about our starting pitching, mainly Luis Castillo and George Kirby, because the rest of our guys did okay. Bryce Miller did fine. Emerson Hancock did good. Logan Gilbert was fantastic. And our bullpen has been really good too. Generally solid. They're fifth and FIP right now at 3.07. They've been doing fine. So we're going to talk about Luis Castillo and George Kirby, and we're going to go one by one. We're going to start with Luis Castillo because he's the ace, supposed to be. And, it's been disappointing because we saw at the end of last year, too, that he was kind of struggling in September. And I think we were all hoping that in 2024 it'd be a new year and he could really take that extra step. And these first two starts have not been good and the same issues as before. And kind of the same thing for George Kirby, which we'll get into. But like I was saying in my main recap, it's like Luis Castillo. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but it seems to happen from the stretch. Like his command just isn't there anymore, or in the fourth and fifth inning, really his command just goes insane. He starts hanging his sliders, starts hanging his changeups, and you know teams like the Guardians, even if they are not maybe the best offensive team in the league, they are going to take advantage of that. Now, I think part of it could be the cold weather. I don't have, once again, stats to back that up, but I would not be surprised if that could be a bit of the issue here. That it's just for some reason his stamina kind of goes down with the cold weather, and maybe he'll get better in summer. However, we need him to be good now. That is the issue. We need. I'm hoping his next start, which is going to be against Toronto in Toronto, where he's shoved before. I mean, look at the wild card game in 2022. He pitches well in Toronto. We need him to pitch well in Toronto. Like his next start needs to be good, or else I'm going to be really worried. Not going to lie. That something needs to change with his game. And then when we're talking about George Kirby, it really, I mean, his first start was great. We went over it already. However, this start today was really indicative of kind of my main concern when I've talked about George Kirby in 2024 is that he is in the zone so much. And when he's in the zone so much, he is prone to that team who is contact heavy and aggressive. They are going to hit off him. He can whittle his way around those kind of more powerful lineups because usually you're taking contact away from the equation when you add more power. Teams like the Guardians aren't going to do that. They are contact only. They're going to put the ball in play. And when you are staying in the zone, they know that. So they know that you're most likely they're not going to chase because there's nothing to chase. And it's going to be harder to get that whiffs. And so I'm hoping that he can find that way to start being able to get guys outside of the zone, because if he can't, he's going to struggle with these lineups for a long time. And if he wants to take that next step and be considered the ace of the rotation that so many people are ready to kind of like throw him into, he needs to figure that out, because he really can't be that ace and that Cy Young contender until he can find a way to get literally anyone out. Plain and simple. And he even said it himself after the game today that he wasn't mixing up his first pitches enough, which I could tell. It seems like he was throwing a lot of first pitch fastballs, and they were hitting up. Stephen Kwan was going insane today off of them, and so yeah, I do think, at the end of the day, George Kirby is still a young and developing pitcher, which is crazy to say with how good he is, but he is. He has stuff to work on. He knows that. The coaching staff knows what he needs to work on. So at this point, I'm still going to put my faith in him that he will figure that out. However, I'm hoping it's sooner than rather than later because we cannot afford to keep having Castillo and Kirby go 1-2 with poor performances like we did in this series. That's not going to play well. We need them to get back to who they are and just keep us in games, right? Like Kirby didn't keep us in the game today. They scored 8 runs in 3 innings, less than 4 innings. And Castillo in both of his games kind of put us out of it for the most part. I mean, they weren't insurmountable leads, but they were pretty significant. So I'm hoping we can do a lot better in that regard. I do trust that Luis Castillo and George Kirby can figure out their respective issues. And really, at this point, I can only hope that it's sooner rather than later. So, but overall, when we're looking at this first series or these first 2 series, this first week of 2024, you know, you got to say you're disappointed, right? Because I think we had the same, feeling going into 2023, coming off of our, playoff run in 2022. The vibes were high that we were going to come out the gate swinging and on fire and hopefully do something special. Had the same thing this year. It was a bit different because obviously we missed the playoffs last year, but I think a lot of people were very hyped about how we did in spring training and how the guys were looking at that point. And it's just hasn't translated yet. But overall, like I've said once or twice now, it is early. And I'm sorry if you hate that term, but it is true when it comes to the performances. We have to trust that these guys are going to figure it out. There's way too much talent on this team on both the pitching side and the offensive side for them not to figure it out at some point. So I'm hoping that this next road trip going forward is going to be very helpful for us. We're getting a bit of a change of scenery. We are going to Milwaukee and then Toronto. So let's get into our preview for the next string of games. Like I said, first, we're going to do a 3-game series Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Milwaukee. Our pitching matchups for that: game 1, Logan Gilbert versus Freddie Peralta. Game 2, Bryce Miller versus DL Hall. And game 3, Emerson Hancock versus Colin Rhea. So general things about this matchup first before we get into like the pitching side and the pitching matchups. The Brewers are hot. No two ways about it. They are coming off a 4-1 record currently. They ended up sweeping the Mets in New York to start out the year in a 3-game series, and then they split a 2-game series against the Minnesota Twins. I don't know why they had a 2-game series. It's very weird, but they did. So they split those games. They have a 4-1 record. Notable injuries to look out for: Trevor Megill is going to be on the injured list due to concussion. He's not going to be active for our series. Hope he gets better because from what I heard, it was a pretty scary injury. He like fainted in a grocery store or something like that. So yeah, I'm glad he's okay. And then closer Devin Williams, he is not available for the Milwaukee Brewers right now. He's on the IL, and as far as I'm aware, we're not going to see him. So that is really good for us because once David Williams is in the game, I mean, the game's pretty much over at that point. But let's break it down one by one as far as the pitching matchups go, starting with game 1. I do like this matchup for a couple reasons. Once again, this is Logan Gilbert versus Freddie Peralta. First, I'm a huge Logan Gilbert stan, so I am going to feel pretty good going into most of his starts at this point. I do think that he could easily have a better year than Castillo and Kirby. We will see. I'm hoping that he does have a good start in Milwaukee. We're really going to need him to pitch well to start out that series. And then when it comes to Freddie Peralta, a couple things I really like with him, and to kind of backtrack a bit on our offense, breaking stuff is apparently our huge kryptonite, and that's really annoying. But yeah, that is, I guess the term that teams are going with is spin it and win it against us. Great. Well, Freddie Peralta, thankfully, is mainly a fastball pitcher. In his opening day or first game start for against the Mets, he threw his fastball 56% of the time. So generally speaking, his breaking stuff is just about average. So I'm hoping that that can bode well for us. That he is not exactly a guy who's going to be throwing sliders and sweepers like not like crazy. Like he's still going to be very fastball heavy. So looking forward to that matchup. Going into game two, Bryce Miller versus DL Hall. I think this is going to be really interesting. One on the Bryce Miller side, we're still going to be observing how his splitter does, how his slider does based off of his fastball. So I'm really hoping that that can continue to develop and he can get some good Ks with those, and just generally hopefully avoid the long ball this outing, because if he does, then I mean he's probably poised to have a pretty decent outing, honestly. And as far as DL Hall goes, from what I could tell, it looks like he's usually a reliever, but he's kind of being like a starter opener due to Brandon Woodruff being on the IL. He's also mainly a fastball guy. He has an okay changeup, curveball, slider mix. So he might be difficult. We'll see. His first start against the Mets, he went 4 innings pitched, gave up 2 earned runs, and only got 1 strikeout. So it sounds like he doesn't have a whole lot of whiff in his game. Hopefully he's good for us. We'll see, because we gave up 16 strikeouts to Lance Lynn last year. So, sorry, that's a little trauma response right there that I'm even mentioning that. So yeah, I'm gonna hope good things for game two, and then in game three, Emerson Hancock versus Colin Ria. It's a Hancock start, so I'm gonna go into it kind of expecting probably not to win that game, but I hope so. I hope we do, because we won the last game, so it's not like it's out of the cards. But Milwaukee is very hot offensively right now, so we'll see. But if I were to bet on any three of these games that we're going to drop, it's going to be that one. Rhea has a very large arsenal of pitches. It's up to 6. His fastball is still his best pitch. He has a decent sinker, sorry, as well. Looks like in his first start, he was very heavy on his sinker cutter combo with plenty of sweepers too. So for me, when I see that, I think that's going to be a tough cookie for this lineup specifically. So we will see on that. However, if I'm going to put a prediction in there, I do think that we can probably take 2 out of 3. I think we can win this series for sure. I'm hoping that us being out of T-Mobile and into Milwaukee, which I think still has a retractable roof, but it's a bit more closed off than T-Mobile is. Hopefully that helps our offense a bit. So it's kind of that up in the air thing. Like I can't tell you how I think they're going to do for sure, because it's so early in the season. I don't have enough sample size to really say, but I think we definitely can win this series. I don't think we're going to sweep this series or anything, because Milwaukee has been playing well so far to start the year. But I can only hope for a W, and if we get that, I'm going to be super happy. So, and then after that, we go up north across the border to Toronto. We're going to play a 3-game series there. From what I can tell, and I did kind of my starting pitching math right here, I think we're going to be facing Barrios, Bassett, and Kikuchi, and that's going to be against Castillo, Kirby, and Logan. So we have our best pitchers up for it, and they have, outside of Gosman, their best pitchers too. So it's going to be a tough series. Toronto's been a bit lackluster, to say the least, to start the year. They got no hit by the Houston Astros only a few days ago. So hopefully we're catching them at a good time when their offense is also kind of struggling as well. But Barrios, Bassett, and Kikuchi are all going to be pretty tough customers when it comes to that. So um, really, you can only hope that being out of T-Mobile and for some reason just kind of being on the road and the excitement that comes along with that travel and all that, Castillo and Kirby have better outings. Once again, I'm not super worried about Logan Gilbert. So um yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Toronto series. I don't have a whole lot of analysis yet because I haven't been able to really look too much into how the Blue Jays have been playing. I just know that they've been struggling, to say the least, kind of similar to us. So hopefully we catch them at a good time. I think we still have a pretty good shot at winning that series. So if we can go out of this first road trip with a winning record, I'm going to be happy with that. If we can sweep any of these series, I'm going to be super happy. I think kind of the name of the game for not only this road trip and just all of the next string of games going forward, homestands, road trips, whatever, is to just not lose them. Just get that winning record and start piling those wins over 500. That's kind of my goal at this point for this lineup, and both on the pitching side and the offensive side. So we'll see if we can do it. But yeah, that's going to be it for this main podcast part of Raise the Trident. We're going to go into our fun little segments now to end the show, starting with a couple guys you might know, and they're going to give us a bit of a weekly update, if you will.
Breaking news! The MLB season is off and running, and two of the worst teams in baseball, the Miami Marlins and the Houston Astros, they suck. The Marlins lost 10-2 to the Los Angeles Angels of Disneyland, bringing their record to 0-7. Meanwhile, the Houston Astros and Josh Hader had a 2-run home run hit in the top of the 9th inning by Davis Schneider of the Toronto Blue Jays, helping them be in the cellar with the Oakland Athletics in the American League West. Some other teams like the Mariners also not off to a hot start, but Joe, tell me more.
We are here from the Raise the Trident show here, and my God, the Detroit Tigers, my pick to win the AL Central, by the way. 4-0 to start the year, could be 6-0, but the rain does not want to see them win. They're playing the winless Mets in New York, postponed to a doubleheader happening today. Check back in with them later to see if they've gone 6-0 on the season. Stay hot in the American League Central. Looking over to the National League here, staying in the Central Division here. The Pittsburgh Pirates started off the season 5-0, lost. Unfortunately, they are now 5-1, but a great start there for Pittsburgh. They had a great start last year. Let's see if they can continue it in the 2024 campaign. Another team, we didn't really pick them, Colton. Milwaukee Brewers, they're also 4-1 right now. Our Seattle Mariners are heading to Milwaukee for a Friday start of their first road series of the year. Freddie Peralta on the bump against Logan Gilbert. Let's hope our Mariners can bounce back on the road. And speaking of the Seattle Mariners, the Pacific Northwest is home to maybe the most popular cryptid of all time, Sasquatch, aka Bigfoot. But in a recent tweet by Brooksgate, the Mariners are somehow tied for 4th place on Sasquatch sightings within 100 miles of T-Mobile Park. And we thought, how could this be?
Joe, I agree. How could this be? But looking back at it, it makes sense because Jake hasn't left the house in a while because he's been making this Raise the Trident podcast thing. Fuck. So for now, from us at Mariner Mojo, we're sending it back to you, Jake.
I'm going to ignore that Bigfoot joke, but thank you to Joe and Colton from Mariner Mojo. You can check their stuff out in the description below. I appreciate them being a part of that as our first one of our recurring segments that we're going to hopefully do just about weekly on this show as well. Nice little jokes, weekend update, SNL type vibes is kind of what we were going for. So I hope you like it. And then we're going to end this off pretty nice, a little creative project of mine. We're going to do a little weather report. And yeah, but that's going to be it for this episode. Appreciate you watching, and let's get into it.